Harley Davidson Showdown, old school versus new bikes. Now you've got to check out these awesome Evos that my friend Blake owns. Look at this baby. Oh, doesn't that sound good? Birds.
Always wants to ride a real man's bike.
I had the pleasure of zapping around on this Evo Hardtail for a few days. Let's discuss new bikes versus old school appeal. What's good about each? Comment as we go along, give your opinion. Why would you buy one over the other? Reason number one, of course, is price. Now there's a price difference and you would think that that's obvious, but it's not, because there are price points that you need to be aware of. Now we all know a new bike, a big Harley V-twin, is the most expensive. If you're buying new or almost new, my favorite sweet spot is just a little bit used. There's some great buys with almost new bikes. Now my touring bike, a 2020 Street Glide Special, was too big for the original purchaser. He returned it and traded it in on something else. Now when I purchased it, very low kilometers, almost brand new, with a lot of accessories that I probably would have purchased myself anyway, thrown in. I think I got a good deal. Now older bikes, shovels and earlier, are expensive to buy because there's not many of them around. They're rare to find and they're in demand for a variety of reasons, like being very cool. Now Harley Evos are interesting. I noticed on the weekend a nice, tough looking mid-90s Harley Davidson Fat Boy with an 80 cubic inch Evo engine. Was sold for about $14,000 at the dealer. That seems about fair. But if you look at the private sales, people are asking ridiculous prices for bikes that have been, let's say, hacked at. Modifications are subjective, but some of them are pretty extreme and, in my opinion, ugly. And you'd think it's going to be hard for them to find a buyer, full stop, let alone at an inflated price. Now, by the way, if you don't live in Australia, $10,000 here in Australia is about $6,500 in the United States. That keeps the prices in perspective, and don't forget Harley Davidsons are imports here, so they're going to be more expensive anyway. So if the Evolution prices are higher, they might get passed over for the twin cams. And I'm saying that because I think at the moment the sweet spot for secondhand bikes are twin cams, especially the earlier models. You can find really cheap low kilometer twin cams at the moment. I saw a 2000 touring bike advertised for $11,500 the other day, and I think there are a couple of mid 2000 Diners for $12,000 at the moment, and there's a 2006 Fat Boy for $12,000 as well. That's pretty good pricing for a Harley. Now that low pricing probably means that no one wants them yet, or the economy could be absolutely shocking. But the point is, some of those bikes are 5, 10 years, sometimes more years newer than an Evo. And that might be a bargain, because here in Victoria anyway, you'll start to see the twin cams going onto Club Reg. That makes a twin cam a vintage bike. And I guess it really comes down to what you like. I've owned Evos, twin cams and M8s, and each of the bikes I've had have had pluses and minuses, and they've all been good. I've had a lot of fun on every one of them. Our sponsor today is Resurgence Gear Motorcycle Clothing, and they're all about safety. I'm wearing one of their motorcycle shirts now, AAA rated, very safe, very comfortable, awesome product. Now we know it's safe, just like their jeans. They've tested them publicly under the most extreme circumstances. You've probably seen me show this clip before.
Holy crap! Only the jean. The P-cab's still there, look.
Straight through the jean, but not through the P-cab at all. Nothing. It's not even like broken or...
Now don't forget to use the code OldNotDead. That'll give you a 10% discount, because Resurgence Gear supports the channel and wants to help you. Now, of course, don't forget our supporter gear at oldnotdead.club. Grab some merchandise, it helps the channel, I really appreciate it. And for both Resurgence Gear and our merchandise, for those of you who are overseas, like America, England, Canada, the exchange rate is in your favor. You're only paying peanuts for our products. Now, number two is maintenance. Older bikes are simpler, and all the kinks have been worked out. There's a lot more reliance on the mechanical rather than the electronic, and that makes it much easier for the average person to work on. It can also be cheaper for somebody else to work on an older bike because that's the area of expertise for the independent mechanics, and they're often charging less money than the dealer would. Now, sometimes the dealer doesn't even want to know about your older bike, and I've covered the reasons for this in other videos. So you're sort of forced into the hands of the local or independent mechanic, but that assumes that you have access to one, that you know of one, or that you can reach the closest one. Now, a lot of the maintenance that's required on any of the bikes, old or new, pretty easy to do. You need the service manual, YouTube videos, a friend that is a little bit more experienced. Pretty much anyone can do a lot of the jobs. And that brings us to spare parts. The older the bike is, the harder it is to just roll up to the dealer and say, I need one of those. After a certain number of years, they stop making parts for the older bikes, and then you've got to rely on the aftermarket. And of course, the older the bike, the less of them there are, and therefore there is a lesser market for parts. But irrespective of that, Harley Davidson shines in this department because there is a huge aftermarket of parts, and there is a huge community of people who are restoring and hotting up, etc. So parts are pretty easy to find somewhere in the world. Now that makes owning a Harley Davidson much easier to maintain and keep going over the long haul. Much easier than other brands, unless it's an icon bike like a Kawasaki Z or something. It's sort of like us oldies. If we maintain ourselves, we're going to run trouble-free for centuries. Neglect the fluids, eat junk, don't move, well, your engine's going to cark it. It's the same with bikes. Maintenance is king. Now, number 3 is cool factor. There's no doubt that the older bikes are cooler. I've been riding around on M8s now since they came out, 2016, 2017, whenever it was. You forget what older bikes are like. Now this year I was fortunate enough to ride Vince's Shovel, which featured in a video a couple of months ago, I think. And lately my friend Blake's Evos. Talk about seriously cool. Doesn't this sound good?
Dust breaths in the air. Two dark days, do you have a tear to spare? Make a promise, the world awaits. It's heavy just breathing through this debate. Come on, start a riot. When they love you too much, know it's fake, fake, or even hate. Don't be scared of the way paralyzes you say.
That's the thing with older bikes, they are way more cool than new bikes. They often look good, they usually sound good. You've got things like Springer front ends and hardtails, which give the bike an awesome line. For those of you who don't know, a hardtail is a bike with no suspension. It might be low on performance, but very high on vintage appeal. Look at the lines on them. Talk about aesthetically awesome. I don't have much experience with bikes older than Shovels, and I don't see many of them around. When you do see them, they usually look pretty cool. So put in the comments what you think in regards to cool factors. Shovels are cooler than Evos. Evos are cooler than twin cams, and twin cams are cooler than M8s, or have I got it wrong? And it's all subjective. You can make any bike look cool. No, most bikes you could make them look cool if you put enough effort in. And that's the beauty of the Harley Davidson universe. A lot of people love modifying their bikes, and a lot of people do it with enormous success. The ride, that's number 4. Now ride and performance, that's where the newer bikes really shine. I can cover a lot of kilometers fast. I can ride all day without getting tired on a new bike. More reliable, smoother, faster. What else? They've gone from 4-speed to 5-speed to 6-speed. And the gear changes are really smooth on the newer bikes compared to the old ones. The M8s have a lot less vibration than the twin cams, and the twin cam has a lot less vibration than the Evos. The M8 still feels like a Harley, but it's a pretty smooth ride now. They're just all around convenient bikes. My Street Glide just eats the miles, and with the fairing to take the edge off the wind, I'm getting off the bike at the end of a long, hard ride. I've got energy to do other things instead of dying on the couch like I used to back in the twin cam and Evo days. There's even a mapping system in the fairing, so gone are the days of stopping by the side of the road, pulling off your gloves to check the map and trying to memorize the next 4 corners before you have to do it again. It's right there on the screen in front of you. Easy, convenient. But don't dismiss the old bikes. The vibration is actually pretty good. Makes the bike feel alive. The riding experience on an older bike is a lot more raw, and you've really got to be present and aware of what's going on. Makes you feel like you're part of the bike. The Evo Chopper I've been riding around on, it's only got a rear brake, so you've really got to plan to stop ahead of time. It took me ages to work out it's even got indicators. You've got to stick your hand out whenever you want to turn. And it's a hardtail, so wherever you're going, you're always looking for the smoothest path. The gear changes are not very direct compared to a modern bike. You often miss a gear, and you've really got to be aware of what you're doing. On my Street Glide, I can just ride to Sydney watching Old Not Dead on YouTube. You do watch that, don't you? It sort of rides itself. It's pretty easy, really. So riding this Evo Chopper, you've got all of your senses engaged. You've really got to be aware of what's going on because it's a lot more difficult to ride. It's a raw, physically demanding experience that makes you feel like you are part of the bike. No, not part of the bike, sort of at one with the bike. And all the vibration and the straight pipes means that you think you're going a lot faster than you really are, so you can slow down to like, 140 or something. It's a great experience, and ideally you'd have a new bike for speed and distance, and you'd have an old bike for messing around on a lot closer to home. Now, if you like today's video, you'll appreciate the video that I link here, which will show you how to save 10K plus on a Harley Davidson.
Using all that's left, somewhere in your chest, on your sweetheart hit a mist.